All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get going. Thank you so much for being here and being on time today. We have got just a couple of housekeeping things to work through. I want to talk through Blackboard, what's due this week, as well as what the end of the semester looks like. And then I just want to make a few quick comments about abstracts and conclusions, which are going to be the big additions to part 4, which will be due Friday of Dead Week. And then also kind of answer any questions you guys have about scenarios, because that's going to be the biggest asset to studying for the final exam, is kind of being in the mindset of a research scenario. All right, so first things first, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, and we will walk through Blackboard together as soon as I find it. There you are. All right, so we are really down to the wire, which is probably great news for some of you and not so great news for the rest of you. And so we are in week 14 this week. And with week 14, you only have one thing due on Friday, and that is the scenario self-study that is linked down here in the 4th spot here. So this self-study is like a quiz on Blackboard. There isn't a time limit on it, and you can go through and answer the questions at the end of each one of those scenarios. And so this, like you've seen in quizzes before, these scenarios you may see repeated multiple times, but at the end of each scenario is asking a different question. So please pay attention to detail with each individual scenario. Okay, and my biggest advice to you on scenario stuff is remember to ask the big questions first. Okay, so when you're presented one of these big scenarios that is a gigantic paragraph long, don't forget to ask the basic questions. So I'm going to put this into the chat so you guys have it. So things like, what is the independent variable? Dependent variables. Experimental unit. And then some of the other questions that you can start asking after you get past these basic ones are start asking questions about, like, how many levels of treatments are there? Okay, and then how is the principles of experimental design handled? So the principles are replication, randomization, and local control. Okay, and if you come to the conclusion that some of those principles of experimental design are not handled, that might be what the question is referring to. All right, so those are always good places to start. And so I dropped all those questions into the chat so you guys have a record of them, and feel free to download the chat if you would like. That is absolutely okay. And so just those are good places to start for getting through the scenario assignment that's due this Friday by end of day. All right, so again, with the week 14 material, this Friday, the new material that is due is the scenario self-study that is linked into the week 14 module. Also due this week, if you didn't have a chance to get to it in week 13, is the installing experiments quiz. And so that is linked into the week 13 module. So please don't forget about that if you didn't have a chance to do it. I wanted to give you the option to be able to complete it over break or this week if you needed it, because I know there were several classes that had projects and assignments due Friday before Thanksgiving break. And so adding one more thing to your checkoff sheet is not something that I wanted to do. So this Friday, you have two things due: the installing experiments quiz from week 13 and the scenario self-study, which is in the week 14 module. All right, also in the week 14 module, you will see a slide set, a note guide. Actually, it's the full slide set, so it's not even a guide, it's the full thing about writing abstracts and conclusions. And so this is a resource for you guys to start drafting the abstract and conclusion sections of your paper. And so those are going to be the big additions to the part 4 writing assignment that is detailed out in the writing resources folder and with the no, not writing resources, sorry, the research project folder. That first link is the research paper assignment. And so we're looking at part 4 right here. So part 4 will be due end of day, December 10th. Okay. And as a PDF, it'll be as a PDF, but you're actually going to do a different submission process. It will still be on Blackboard, but it's going to go to, oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind. The plagiarism site. I completely forgot what it's called. But there will be a link.
Turnitin.
Yeah, turnitin.com. Thank you. It will be a LinkedIn through there. You guys will submit through turnitin.com. And so I will make this announcement. I'll go through and readjust the settings. You guys will have 2 chances to submit your paper. And so if you submit your paper and the similarity percentage is over 20%, you should go back through and rewrite parts of your paper to get that similarities percentage down to less than 20%. So 20% is my cutoff for plagiarism, all right? And so anything over that, I'm gonna flag as being plagiarized, and anything under that is gonna be okay. So please make sure that you are properly citing sources. There a few of you need to kind of review APA format to get you out of that link. And if you had any of those issues in part 1, I made a note of that. And so just also be aware that you are not directly quoting research. That's a big no-no in research writing, and you're interpreting the information in a source correctly. Okay. So those are 2 things that can feed into high percentages of plagiarism or similarity scores on turnitin.com. All right. Yeah, Tyler, it will highlight where it's similar. I just have to go in and change the settings to make sure that that occurs.
Right. So I have a quick question about Turnitin. Doesn't I might have my info wrong, but doesn't Turnitin flag anything since we've already submitted this? Isn't it gonna flag it because we've already turned in parts of this? So, or is that, am I thinking it's wrong?
So it shouldn't flag it because we haven't turned it in through turnitin.com.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was thinking of something else then. My bad.
Yeah, no, and even if it does, like, it will tell me where the if something comes up similar, it'll tell me what it's similar to. So like, for example, I had a student that did some research for me and had for a couple of years and had just built on a research project. And so they did their own individual project for this class, but they cited an abstract that was presented at a scientific meeting, and it flagged that. But that was that student's own professional work. So it told me that it was just flagging it to the Western Section Animal Science Proceedings. And that is not plagiarism to me because it's the student's own individual work. So it'll tell me exactly where the information is coming from. Okay. All right, so this week you've got the installing experiments quiz due, you've got the scenario self-study due, and then next week is dead week, so we won't have any new material next week. Next week will be a writing week, and so during this time will be a time to bring questions, come and work on your paper, that type of thing. And then I'm going to try to do at least one more writing workshop next week. I just don't know when at this point. And so, and then Friday, December 10th is our next big due date. So on Friday, December 10th, the following things are due. So first of all, part 4 is due, which is the final draft of the research project. The extra credit is due. And the last thing that will be due is any missed assignments that you want up to half credit on. Okay, so, oh, sorry, Tyler, I sent that directly to you. My bad. That needs to go to everybody in the meeting. There we go. All right, so 3 major things due Friday, December 10th. I just want you guys to have this on the forecast. So part 4, extra credit, and any missed assignments that you want to make up for. Extra credit, if you guys don't recall, it's actually linked and described in the syllabus. And so it is basically the journal club assignment that we did in week 3, I think. And the extra credit is actually linked in over here on the left-hand side as its own module. You can do up to 2 literature reviews using the journal club assignment, and they can be submitted here on this extra credit module. And so you can get up to 10 points per review. So a total of 20 points, which actually would make up for a little bit more than most of the quizzes that were offered this semester. So we had a lot of quizzes that were 15 points and less. And so if you need some extra enthusiasm to do some extra credit, that is one thing to kind of think of it as. And so for you guys, because we are in an active writing situation, I am fine if you want to do a literature review of one of the papers that you are going to incorporate into part 4. So if you need to tweak on a discussion and you want to utilize a new study that you found and you want to do a comprehensive journal club assignment, feel free to do it on that as well. So, all right. And then part 4, the submission module for part 4 will show up in the week 15 module next week under the start here. selection, and then the other assignments that can be submitted for up to half credit, those go to the individual submission links. So nothing is getting emailed to me, okay? All right, any questions about due dates and what we've got due the next 2 weeks?
I have a question about the final. Are you gonna open it before like the time we have to take the final for this class? Or is it just gonna
Yes.
be during that? Yeah, okay.
Yep. So you guys will get more information about the final next week.
Okay.
And yes, we do have a final exam. Okay, cool. Other questions? All right, cool. So I really have to commend you guys as a class. I'm still in the middle of grading part 3s right now, results and discussion, but I got all the way through part 2s, and the average for the class was like 42 out of 50, and that is the highest I have ever had. And so all the stress that you guys were under translated to some really hard, good work. And so I just wanted to commend you for doing such a great job on part 2s. I'm really excited to get into part 3s. The ones that I've looked at so far are looking pretty good. So thank you for just working hard in this class. So this is a class that pays off sometimes 5 years down the road. So right now it can seem very daunting and like there's no point to it, but I promise it will pay off at some point in time. So thank you for working hard. Okay, let's transition really quickly to abstracts and conclusions. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and I'm just going to bring up the slide set that you guys already have linked into the week 14 module. There we go. All right, so with part 4, that is essentially going to be the final draft of this research paper. So that is where you make edits that were suggested by me in the rubrics for parts 2 and 3. And it's also where you add in an abstract section as well as a conclusion section. And so those are the 2 new parts that are going to be in part 4. And so I just wanted to really quickly kind of run through what an abstract entailed and what a conclusion paragraph looks like. So the abstracts are going to be fairly short. Okay, so they're going to be between 150 and 250 words, and they are going to stand on their own, meaning that sometimes the abstract is the only thing that gets read out of the entire research paper. And so it's the thing that is going to be free to people that are doing literature searching. And if they are publishing in a journal that is not open access. And so the abstract has to be very effective. It has to fully and comprehensively explain every aspect of the project. So the justification for why the project was needed, the objectives, brief materials and methods, the important part of materials and methods, the results, and then like one conclusion paragraph. So the parts of that do not show up in an abstract are the discussion. Okay, so there's no discussion in an abstract at all. And so abstracts are going to be really, really basic, but because they have to stand on their own, there can be no references. So you're not going to do in-text citations here. There's no abbreviations unless they're defined first. There's no citation of tables or figures. Okay, and there's no unsubstantiated conclusions. So for example, an unsubstantiated conclusion would be something like, the results of this study could solve climate change. Okay, that is an unsubstantiated conclusion. All right, so one thing that we took away from the results of the composting project is that with the exception of temperature on day one, there were no statistically significant differences in any of the other traits, right? So one of the results or the conclusions would be that, bone in versus boneless off-all material does not result in compost that is different or that has different nutrient components. So that is a substantiated conclusion because that's what our data showed, is that the nutrient data was the same. Okay, so just keep in mind the difference between an unsubstantiated versus substantiated conclusion. All right, and then the abstract is going to have the following sections or components of the following sections in it. So it is going to give a brief introduction or background that describes very concisely the problems and its significance. You're also going to list the objective or the group of objectives that were investigated in the study. You're going to give a brief materials and methods, okay? And then you're going to also give a really brief set of results. And so for our study with the compost project, that becomes really simple because we really only had one result that was significant, everything else was not. And so you can say that in 2 sentences really quickly. And then it's going to have just a sentence about a substantiated conclusion.
For the objectives, is it the lit review objective or are we doing the objective that you wrote out for us?
The objective of the study. Yeah.
Okay.
So not the lit review. Okay, so keep in mind that abstracts are going to be the most read part of the paper. And at the end of the abstract is going to be a few keywords. So you guys are going to list at least 3, no more than 6 keywords here. So this is an example of an abstract that was published in the Western Section Animal Science Proceedings. This is actually Kate Moore's undergrad research project. And so when she wrote this abstract, you can see that there was quick elements of an introduction, some very brief materials and methods. Oops, sorry. Some really specific brief results, one conclusion sentence, and then the keywords were down here at the bottom. And so keywords need to be, I cannot do any, sorry. Keywords need to be in alphabetical order and shouldn't be any more than a phrase or 2 words put together. So what would be some examples of some keywords that we could use from the compost project?
Pile height.
Pile height, great.
Temperature.
Temperature, okay. Let's do 2 more.
Carcass.
Carcass, great. And offal, yeah, that's good, Tim, thanks. Okay, so the one thing that I would actually add to that list of keywords that you guys put in there was compost, okay? So we don't wanna overlook the big picture here. So compost is a great keyword as well. All right, so these are just a couple of quick comments about abstracts. I'm going to let you guys go through and read these in the slide set later on. if we were in person together, we would be doing this exercise. You're more than welcome to go ahead and work through it if you want, and send me what you have, and I will definitely help you out and tell you if you're on the right track or not. And then one thing that I do want to point out is on Blackboard. Let me reshare my screen. In this week's module, there's a resource here. It's called Writing Your Abstract. And so this is a really good way to get started. If we were in person, this would be something that we would be doing during the discussion period. And it's probably going to make me reshare. There we go. And so with this Word document, what you can do is go in and just start to write a sentence or two after each one of these questions. And that starts to actually pull your abstract together. Okay, so what is the problem? What is the objective? What is the experimental design? What are the methods? What are the important results? What's the conclusion? Okay, and then something to always think about too is when we get to the end of an abstract, that conclusion sentence should also state the relationship of the results back to the initial problem, okay? And then what you can do is start pulling those sentences together into an abstract paragraph. And so I just made some lines down here on the second page, and you can list out your 3 to 6 keywords here. And normally I would have you guys edit each other's paper if we were in person. It's a little bit hard to do that while we are online. So, or maybe I just haven't figured that out yet. I haven't decided. So, all right. So those are just a couple of quick comments about abstracts. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about conclusions. There we go. So, cancel. I don't want to end the meeting, Casey. Come on. So the conclusion paragraph is going to go in its own section, which means that it needs a centered, bolded header after the discussion. Okay, so it comes in between the discussion and in between the discussion and the literature cited. Okay, so the conclusions paragraph here is where you're going to summarize your findings, and you're also going to lead into future research, right? So the conclusion is usually going to be one paragraph where you first and foremost start by restating the topic, okay? So this is where you can briefly restate the topic as well as explaining why it is important, okay? We don't want to spend a really large amount of time on this here. If your audience wants a further explanation, they can go back and read the introduction section and the literature review that you did, okay? So usually a single sentence will suffice starting this paragraph. The second part of this paragraph will be the objective sentence, okay? So literally, you guys can copy and paste from the objective that you listed at the end of paragraph 5 in the introduction section. You can put that as the next sentence here in the conclusion, okay? And then the third part of this paragraph will be where you briefly summarize your main points, okay? So just remind your reader what your results were, okay? And so you can do this in probably 1 to 3 sentences, depending on how many results that you have, okay? And then the last sentence is always going to refer to future research. Okay, so in one or a few sentences, what is the next step for research? Okay, and so that's a sentence to put some thought into, right? So you guys have been through boneless versus bone-in offal? Is there something that we need to investigate further with those treatment groups? Is there a different treatment group that we need to kind of move towards next? This is really an area for you guys to kind of think through what you would like to see done in the future. All right, so with all of, or with those 4 components, those things are going to come together to make one paragraph that is a conclusion. Okay, so your conclusion section should be a 1-paragraph section. All right, so that is just an overview of abstracts and conclusions to help you get started. And that will hopefully be able to make it a little bit easier for you guys to get through part 4. Okay, so keep in mind, part 4 is not just the abstract and the conclusion. You need to go back and review the comments and the rubrics from your part 2 and part 3 and make those changes as well. And as you'll see on the part 4 rubric, making the changes is a significant part of the points for part 4. So, all right. That was the big stuff that I wanted to get through today. I am happy to hang out, answer questions. If you want to work on stuff, that works as well. I've got the next group coming in at 3, but I'm going to just stay on Zoom. So happy to take, excuse me, any questions that you may have, or comments, anything. So we will have class next Monday. But that will be a work time for abstract and conclusion work as well. So, all right, guys, no, if there's no questions, feel free to jump off and we will see you in a week.
Where was that abstract outline again?
Oh, the Word document
Yes.
in the week 14 module.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, I'll link it in to writing resources as well.
So next week we have class on Monday, or is next week the optional writing workshop week?
So next week we're it's pretty optional. So yeah, class is really optional for everybody at this point. So I'm not the attendance person that other instructors are. So we are going to have a time to meet and work on stuff during this 3-hour period next week.
Alrighty then, thank you.
Yep, you bet.